My name is John Matthews, and at 73 years old, I thought I'd seen everything life could throw at a man. I was wrong. What happened 2 years ago at the Riverside Ballroom changed everything I thought I knew about my family, my past, and the nature of truth itself. It was supposed to be a celebration, Emily and my 40th wedding anniversary. Our daughter Sophie had insisted on throwing us a party, renting out the whole ballroom, inviting everyone we'd ever known. 40 years deserves something special, she'd said, and who was I to argue? Emily had been so excited, buying a new dress, getting her hair done, acting like we were 20-somethings heading to prom instead of septuagenarians celebrating 4 decades of marriage. But I wasn't at the ballroom yet. I was sitting in my car in the parking lot of St. Mary's Hospital, holding test results that made no sense. Dr. Peterson had called that morning, insisting I come in immediately. "There's been an irregularity in your blood work," he'd said. "Something we need to discuss in person." The irregularity, it turned out, was that my blood type was wrong. Not wrong in the medical records, wrong for what it should be given my children's blood types. It was medically impossible for me to be Sophie's biological father. Or Daniel's. Or Margaret's. "There must be a mistake," I'd told Peterson. "We ran the test 3 times, John. There's no mistake." I'd left his office in a daze, driven to the ballroom on autopilot. 40 years of marriage. 3 children who apparently weren't mine. Emily had some explaining to do, but not tonight. I wouldn't ruin the party, wouldn't devastate our children in front of 200 guests. Tomorrow would be soon enough for the truth. The Riverside Ballroom was lit up like a constellation when I arrived. Sophie had outdone herself. Twinkling lights, flowers everywhere, a band playing songs from our dating years. I could hear the music from the parking lot, The Temptations, My Girl, drifting through the night air. Our wedding song. I took a deep breath, pocketed the test results, and walked toward the entrance. But something made me pause at the window instead of going through the main doors. Maybe it was instinct, maybe cowardice, but I wanted to see Emily before she saw me. I needed to study the face of the woman who'd been lying to me for 4 decades. The ballroom was packed. I recognized faces from across the years, neighbors, colleagues, Emily's book club, my poker buddies. Everyone we'd accumulated in a lifetime of living. They were all there, drinking champagne, laughing, celebrating a marriage that was apparently built on deception. Then I saw her. Emily was on the dance floor, but not where I expected. She wasn't with our guests or waiting for me. She was in the far corner, in the shadows where the dancing lights didn't quite reach, pressed tightly against a young man. They were swaying to the music, her head on his shoulder, his arms wrapped around her in a way that was decidedly not platonic. The young man looked maybe 30, 35 at most. Dark hair, tall, built like someone who worked with his hands rather than behind a desk. I didn't recognize him, which was strange. I thought I knew everyone Sophie had invited. My first instinct was rage. After everything I'd discovered today, now this? Emily wasn't content with having children with another man. She had to flaunt a current affair at our anniversary party? But something made me pause. Pull out my phone instead of charging over. I needed evidence, needed proof of what I was seeing. The lawyer in me. I'd practiced corporate law for 45 years. New documentation was everything. I snapped a few pictures. Emily's face was turned away, but her silver hair was unmistakable, as was the navy dress she'd shown me that morning, spinning like a girl to show how it moved. The young man's face was clear in one shot, looking down at her with an expression I couldn't quite read. Tenderness? Sadness? Something more complex? I walked through the main entrance, nodding at guests who called out greetings, making my way to our reserved table at the front of the room. Sophie intercepted me halfway. "Dad! Where have you been? We've been waiting to do the toast." "Traffic," I lied. "Where's your mother?" "She's around somewhere. Probably dancing. You know how she loves this old music." Old music. Our music. The soundtrack to a life I was beginning to think I'd imagined. I sat at our table, watching the dance floor. Emily and the young man had disappeared. Maybe they'd seen me come in, scattered like guilty teenagers. My phone felt heavy in my pocket, the photos weighing more than any device should. John! There you are! Richard and Diane Brennan, our oldest friends, sat down beside me. We'd been a foursome for 35 years, vacations, dinners, raising kids together. Their son Tommy had been Daniel's best friend growing up. Hell of a party, Richard said, clapping me on the back. 40 years. You two are an inspiration. An inspiration. I wanted to laugh. Or cry. Instead, I smiled and accepted his congratulations. That's when I saw them again. Emily had emerged from somewhere, the young man still beside her. They were walking toward the main tables now, no longer touching but clearly together. Emily's face was flushed, her eyes bright with what looked like tears. She saw me and stopped dead. The young man kept walking, came straight to our table. Up close, I could see details I'd missed from the window. His eyes were green like Emily's. His nose had that distinctive bump that all of Emily's family had, the one she'd always hated in photos. His hands, when he extended one to shake mine, were carbon copies of my father-in-law's, large, capable, with a crooked pinky from an old break. Mr. Matthews, he said. I'm James. James Wilson. Wilson. Emily's maiden name. I shook his hand automatically, my mind racing. I don't believe we've met. No, sir. I wasn't sure I'd come tonight. But Emily, Mrs. Matthews, insisted it was important. I looked past him to Emily, who was standing frozen by the dance floor. And you know my wife, how? James glanced back at Emily, then at me. His face was a study in conflict, words fighting to get out, others fighting to stay in. It's complicated, he said finally. Most things are, I replied. Why don't you sit down and tell me about it? But before James could respond, Emily was there, slightly out of breath, her hand on James's arm. John, she said, her voice strange. We need to talk. Not here. Not now. But soon. I think now is perfect, I said, pulling out the photos on my phone. Unless you prefer I show these to everyone? Our daughter did hire a photographer, but I doubt these are the kind of anniversary photos she had in mind. Emily looked at the screen, and her face went white. John, it's not what you think. Funny, that seems to be the theme of the day. Nothing is what I think. Including, apparently, the paternity of our children. The words came out louder than intended. Richard and Diane looked shocked. Sophie, approaching with champagne for a toast, stopped mid-step. What? Sophie asked, her voice small. I pulled out the medical papers. My hand was steady. 45 years of maintaining composure in hostile boardrooms served me well. According to these tests, I'm not your biological father. Or Daniel's. Or Margaret's. So perhaps your mother can explain what exactly I saw on that dance floor, and who exactly this young man is, and what exactly our 40 years of marriage have been. The ballroom had gone quiet. 200 people waiting for an explanation. Emily looked at James, then at me, then at Sophie. When she spoke, her words shattered everything I thought I knew. James is my son, she said quietly. Mine and David's. From before you and I met. David. My brother David, who died in Vietnam in 1971. 2 years before Emily and I started dating. The ballroom erupted. Sophie dropped the champagne, glass shattering on the floor. Guests whispered, some pulling out phones, others moving closer to hear better. This was better than any soap opera, any scandal they'd witnessed in their small Minneapolis suburb. Everyone out, I said, not shouting but projecting in my courtroom voice. Party's over. Dad, Sophie started. Now. Everyone except family. Out. It took 20 minutes to clear the room. Richard and Diane tried to stay, to help, but I sent them away too. Finally, it was just us, Emily, myself, Sophie, Danielle, who'd been summoned from the bar, Margaret, pulled away from her boyfriend, and James. James Wilson. Emily's son with my dead brother. Explain, I said. Everything. From the beginning. Emily sat down heavily, looking every one of her 70 years. David and I were together in high school. You knew that. I did know that. My younger brother and my future wife had been high school sweethearts. When David enlisted in '69, Emily had waited for him. When he died in '71, she'd been devastated. I'd comforted her. 2 years later, we'd started dating. A classic story of shared grief becoming love. Except apparently, there was more. I was pregnant when David left for Vietnam. Emily continued. We didn't know. I didn't find out until after he was gone. So you had the baby? James? No. Yes. It's complicated. She looked at James, who nodded encouragement. My parents sent me away. To a home for unwed mothers in Iowa. They told everyone I was visiting my aunt, dealing with grief. I had James there. They made me give him up for adoption. But then how? I found her. James interjected. 3 years ago. DNA testing, adoption records. I'd always known I was adopted, and when my adoptive parents died, I went looking for my birth family. 3 years ago. Emily had known for 3 years and never told me. The children, I said, focusing on what mattered most. Sophie, Daniel, Margaret. If I'm not their father. You are their father, Emily said firmly. Just not biologically. Then who? She looked at me with something like pity. You really don't know? You never suspected? Suspected what? John, you're sterile. You've always been sterile. From the mumps you had in college, the bad case that put you in the hospital. The room spun. Mumps. I remembered being sick, remembered the high fever, the weeks of recovery. But sterile? The doctors said there might be fertility issues. I said slowly. But you got pregnant with Sophie so quickly. Because she's David's too. The words didn't make sense. David had been dead for 2 years when Sophie was conceived. Unless. The sperm bank, Emily whispered. David banked sperm before deploying. A lot of soldiers did. In case something happened. After he died, the samples should have been destroyed, but there was a mix-up. They were labeled under a different name. I found out when I was working at the hospital, saw the records. And you used them? Without telling me? You wanted children so badly. And the tests showed you couldn't have them. I thought it was a gift. David's children, raised by you. Keeping both of you alive in a way. All 3? They're all David's? Yes. I looked at my children, not my children, who were staring at their mother in horror. You lied to us our whole lives? Sophie asked, tears streaming down her face. I gave you a father, Emily said. A wonderful father who loved you, raised you, gave you everything. Would the truth have made anything better? Yes. Daniel shouted. The truth always makes things better. We had a right to know. Did you? Emily shot back. Did you have a right to grow up feeling like medical experiments? Like products of a dead man's frozen sperm? John is your father in every way that matters. Except genetically, Margaret said quietly. She'd been silent until now, processing. Except medically. Do you know how many forms I've filled out with family medical history? All lies. I stood up, needed to move, to think. The ballroom felt too small, too hot, despite its vast size. The decorations Sophie had so carefully chosen, photos of Emily and me through the years, now seemed like props in an elaborate fiction. How many people knew? I asked, not looking at anyone. No one, Emily said. Just me and the doctor who did the procedures. Dr. Martins. He died 10 years ago. The procedures, I repeated. Plural. 3 times you went through artificial insemination with my dead brother's sperm. 3 times you came home to me, let me believe we'd conceived naturally. You were so happy. She whispered. Each time, you were so happy. I laughed, bitter and short. I was living a lie. You were living a life. Emily stood now too, anger finally showing. A good life. With children who adored you, a wife who loved you. Who loved me so much she spent our entire marriage deceiving me. To protect you. To give you what you wanted most. I wanted honesty. I wanted a real marriage. You had a real marriage. What we had was real. Was it? Was any of it real? Or was I just a convenient replacement for David? Someone to raise his children since he couldn't? The accusation hung in the air like poison. Emily's face crumbled. How can you say that? I loved you. Love you? But you loved him first. And apparently, never stopped. James stepped forward then. Mr. Matthews, I think there's something else you should know. Everyone turned to him. This stranger who was family, this son of David's who looked so much like the brother I'd lost. I didn't just find Emily through DNA testing, he said. I found her because I was looking for something specific. Medical information. What kind of medical information? Sophie asked. I have a son, James said. Had. He died 2 years ago from a genetic condition. Something that runs in families but skips generations. I needed to find my birth parents to understand if my other children were at risk. Other children. David's grandchildren. Emily's grandchildren she'd never known about. How many? Emily asked, tears flowing freely now. 3. 2 girls and a boy. Aged 8, 6, and 4. And the genetic condition? I asked, my mind already racing ahead. It's carried on the Y chromosome. Only affects males. It's why I needed to find my biological father's family. He looked at Daniel. Your sons could be carriers. Any male children in the line. Daniel had 2 boys. 5 and 3 years old. Perfect, healthy boys who might be carrying a time bomb in their DNA. This is why we needed to tell you, Emily said to me. James found me 3 years ago, told me about the condition. I wanted to tell you immediately. But then we'd have to explain everything, and I thought maybe we could just quietly get the boys tested without me knowing. I finished. More deception. To protect you. Always to protect you. From what? From knowing my brother still lived on in our children? From understanding my real role in their lives? From making informed medical decisions? From feeling like you weren't enough, she said quietly. From feeling like I'd chosen you as a consolation prize. From questioning every moment of our lives together. Well, congratulations. I'm questioning them all now. Margaret, ever practical even in crisis, was the first to refocus on what mattered. We need to get tested. All of us. The boys especially. She was right, of course. Whatever emotional devastation we were dealing with, there were potential medical consequences that couldn't wait for us to process our feelings. I have all the information, James said, pulling out a folder he'd apparently brought with him. The condition is called Leber's hereditary optic neuropathy. It causes progressive vision loss, usually starting in young adulthood. My son started showing symptoms at 15. He was blind by 17. The deterioration triggered a depression that led to his suicide. The room went silent. This young man had lost a child, had come looking for family to save his remaining children, and had walked into our celebration-turned-catastrophe. I'm sorry, I said, meaning it. No parent should have to go through that. No, he agreed. Which is why when I found Emily, when I learned about all of you, I knew I had to warn you. Even if it meant. He gestured at the chaos around us. This. Sophie was already on her phone, presumably researching the condition. It says here it's maternally inherited but only affects males. So Daniel's boys are at risk, but my daughter isn't? Correct, James said. Though she could be a carrier and pass it to her sons. God, Daniel muttered, slumping in his chair. My boys. Emma's going to How do I tell Emma that our sons might go blind because of genetics I didn't even know I had? Emma, Daniel's wife, was home with their boys. She'd skipped the party because the youngest had a fever. She had no idea her world was about to implode. There are treatments now, James said quickly. Gene therapy trials. Things that weren't available for my son. But only if you know to look for it, if you catch it early. I watched Emily watching James, saw the pain in her eyes at meeting this child she'd been forced to give up, at learning about the grandchild she'd never know. Whatever anger I felt, I couldn't deny her grief was real. You've known for 3 years, I said to her. You've carried this for 3 years. I didn't know how to tell you. Every time I tried, I'd think about how it would destroy everything we'd built. And then James would send updates about his children, photos, and I'd think maybe I could find another way. There was no other way, I said. There was only the truth. My phone buzzed. Richard texting to check if we were okay. The gossip mill would be running overtime. By tomorrow, everyone in our social circle would know something had happened at the Matthews anniversary party, though they wouldn't know what. We need a plan, I said, falling back on 45 years of crisis management. Medical testing first. James, can you connect us with the specialists you've been working with? Already done. I have an appointment scheduled at Mayo Clinic for next week. I hoped we'd be having this conversation. You knew Emily would tell me? I knew she'd have to, eventually. The weight of it was killing her. I looked at Emily. She did look older, frilier than even a few months ago. The secret had been eating at her. And legally, I continued, we need to understand the implications. Inheritance, medical rights, insurance. Dad, Sophie said, can we please stop talking logistics for a minute and acknowledge that our entire lives have been a lie? Not a lie, Emily insisted. A different truth than you thought, but not a lie. John raised you. John is your father. But biologically, we're David's children, Daniel said. Uncle David, who we never met, who died before any of us were born. Who was a hero, Emily said firmly. Who died serving his country. Who loved me and would have loved all of you. But we'll never know that, will we? Margaret asked. Because he's gone, and you made this choice for all of us. I walked to the window, looking out at the parking lot where guests were still lingering, discussing what they'd witnessed. The gossip would be unbearable, but that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, I needed to understand who my brother really was. Tell me about David and you, I said to Emily. The truth this time. All of it. Emily sighed, aged by the weight of finally releasing her secrets. We were together from sophomore year of high school. First loves, you know? That intensity that only exists when you're young and don't know any better. I remember, I said. I did remember. David bringing Emily to family dinners, their hands always intertwined, the way they looked at each other like the rest of the world didn't exist. When he got drafted, we talked about getting married before he left, but our parents said we were too young. So we made promises instead. And, she paused, looking at James, we made love for the first time the night before he shipped out. Just once. I got pregnant from that one time. The irony, James said quietly. One night created me, and then years of trying with frozen samples created them. He gestured to my children, David's children. When did you find out about the pregnancy? Sophie asked, journalist instincts kicking in despite her personal investment. 6 weeks after David left. I was terrified. This was 1969. Unwed mothers weren't celebrated. My father would have killed me. Literally, maybe. So you hid it? My mother figured it out. She'd had 5 kids, she knew the signs. She told my father I was sick with grief, needed time away. Sent me to her sister in Iowa, who knew a place, the Magdalene Home for Wayward Girls. Jesus, Daniel muttered. That sounds medieval. It was. We were fallen women, punished for our sins. They made us work, laundry, cooking, cleaning, right up until delivery. No pain medication during birth, that was part of our penance. Then they took the babies immediately. I held James for 5 minutes before they carried him away. James reached over and took her hand. I had good parents. The Wilsons were kind people. I want you to know that. But they're gone now? I asked. Car accident 5 years ago. That's what prompted me to search for my birth parents. And you found Emily through DNA testing? 23andMe. He confirmed. She'd done it 2 years earlier. Sophie had given it to her for Christmas, right? Sophie nodded numbly. I thought it would be fun. Find out our ancestry. I had no idea. You couldn't have known, Emily said. But you knew, I said. When you took that test, you knew there was a chance James would find you. I hoped, she admitted. I'd been looking for him for years, but the adoption records were sealed. When DNA testing became popular, I thought maybe. So you wanted to be found? I wanted to know he was okay. That he'd had a good life. That giving him up hadn't been for nothing. And when he contacted you? I was terrified and elated. I met him in secret at first. Of course you did, I interrupted, bitterness creeping back. I needed to understand what he wanted. Why he was looking. When he told me about his son, about the genetic condition, I knew we'd have to tell everyone eventually. But I kept putting it off. For 3 years. For 3 years, she confirmed. Margaret had been quiet, processing. Now she spoke up. Mom, when you used David's sperm for us, was it really just about Dad being sterile? Or were you trying to keep David alive? Emily's composure finally broke completely. She sobbed, deep, wrenching sobs that seemed to come from her soul. Both, she gasped between sobs. It was both. I loved your father, but I'd loved David first, and when I found those samples, it felt like fate. Like a way to give John the children he wanted while keeping part of David in the world. That wasn't your choice to make, I said. No, she agreed. It wasn't. But I made it anyway. And I've lived with that choice for 40 years. Sophie's phone buzzed. She looked at it and paled. The photographer. She's asking if she should still send the photos from tonight. The photographer. Of course. Sophie had hired a professional to capture the anniversary party. How much had she captured before we cleared the room? Tell her yes, I said. Dad, why? Because I want to see them. I want to see what we looked like before everything shattered. And during. Sophie made the call. Within minutes, a link appeared in her email. We gathered around her laptop, this fractured family trying to see itself from the outside. The early photos were painful in their normalcy. Guests arriving, hugging, laughing. The decorations Sophie had spent weeks planning. Emily greeting people, radiant in her navy dress, playing the perfect hostess. Then there was me arriving, looking tired but trying to smile. The photographer had caught my moment at the window. I was visible in the background of a shot focused on the dessert table, my face pressed against the glass like a stranger looking in at someone else's life. Which, I supposed I was. There, Daniel pointed at the screen. There's Mom with James. The photographer had captured them dancing, though from an angle that suggested she didn't realize the significance. Emily's face was visible over James's shoulder, eyes closed, peaceful, lost in what I now understood was a moment with the son she'd lost and found again. You look happy, I said to Emily. I was dancing with my firstborn, she said quietly. The child I'd mourned for 50 years. Yes, I was happy. The next photos showed my entrance, my conversation with Richard and Diane, the moment James approached our table. The photographer had captured his extended hand, my confused face, Emily frozen in the background. Then the confrontation. The photographer, professional that she was, had kept shooting even as the drama unfolded. There was Sophie dropping the champagne. Daniel's shocked face. Margaret covering her mouth. Emily collapsing into a chair. Me, standing rigid, papers in my hand like weapons. We look like a tragedy, Margaret said. We are a tragedy, Daniel responded. The last photo was the most telling. It was after I'd ordered everyone out, when just the family remained. We were scattered around the ballroom like survivors of a bombing, isolated, stunned, each trapped in our own grief. But James was moving toward Emily, and I was watching them, and there was something in my expression that I didn't recognize. What are you thinking there? Sophie asked, pointing at my face in the photo. I studied it. What was that expression? Not just anger or betrayal. There was something else. I'm thinking that he looks like David, I said finally. James. He looks so much like David. It was true. Now that the shock was wearing off, I could see it clearly. The shape of his face, the way he stood, even his hand gestures, all echoes of my little brother. Do you have pictures? I asked James. Of your family? Your children? He pulled out his phone, swiped to a photo album. This is my wife, Patricia. These are our kids Lily, Rose, and David. David? Emily gasped. After my biological father. Even though I didn't know him, I wanted to honor him somehow. I looked at the photos. 3 beautiful children and a tired-looking woman who was presumably dealing with James's search for his birth family on top of grieving their lost son. They don't know about us, James said. Patricia knows I found you, but I haven't told the kids yet. I wanted to see how this went first. How did you think it would go? Daniel asked. Honestly? Better than this. I thought there might be surprise, maybe some anger, but I didn't expect. He gestured at the empty ballroom. Complete destruction. You didn't know about us, Sophie said. David's other children. No. Emily only told me she'd had 3 children with John. She didn't tell me the truth about their paternity. Another lie of omission. I muttered. I couldn't tell him without telling you. Emily defended. It all had to come out together. Or not at all, I said. You could have taken it to your grave. Could I? With a genetic condition that could affect the boys? With James needing family medical history? With you eventually finding out you were sterile through some routine test? The truth always comes out, John. Always. I need a drink, Daniel announced. The ballroom's bar was still set up, abandoned by the bartender but fully stocked. He poured himself a scotch, then looked at the rest of us. Anyone else? We all raised our hands, even Emily, who rarely drank. Daniel played bartender, and soon we were sitting in a circle of chairs, anniversary decorations mockingly cheerful around us, drinking scotch and trying to make sense of our shattered family. Tell me about David, James said to me. I know he died in Vietnam, but that's all. David. My little brother, dead 51 years but suddenly present in this room through his children, his legacy, his choices made before shipping out to war. He was brilliant. I started. Smarter than me, more charming, better looking. Everything came easy to him, school, sports, girls. I glanced at Emily. Especially girls. He wasn't perfect, Emily added. He was impulsive, reckless sometimes. The night before he left, when he knew there could be consequences. He didn't care. Said if anything happened to him, at least there'd be something of us left in the world. Prophetic, Margaret said dryly. He joined ROTC in high school, I continued. Thought the military would pay for college. When Vietnam escalated, he got called up right after graduation. He was 18. Just a kid, James said. We were all kids. I was 22, just out of college myself. I'd gotten a deferment for school, then for grad school. The privilege of being the older brother with better timing. You feel guilty, Sophie observed. Every day. He died, and I lived. He went to war, and I went to law school. He lost everything, and I got. I paused, looking at Emily. I got his girl. That's not how it happened, Emily protested. Isn't it? David dies, you grieve, I comfort you, we fall in love. Classic story? You make it sound calculated. It wasn't. We were both broken by losing him. That shared grief brought us together. And yet you were using his sperm to create our children. That doesn't suggest you'd moved on. I never claimed to have moved on. You can love two people, John. The dead and the living. The past and the present. But you chose the past. Every time you used those samples, you chose David over me. I chose both. David's genetics, your parenting. Both of you living on in these children. Did he know? James asked suddenly. David. Did he know about the sperm banking? Emily nodded. It was his idea. The army was offering it to soldiers, especially those in combat units. He joked that if anything happened, I should have his babies anyway. Her voice broke. I don't think either of us thought I actually would. How did he die? James asked. The records just say killed in action. I'd never told this story to my children. They knew their uncle had died in Vietnam, but the details had always been too painful to share. Now, it seemed, everything was being dragged into the light. It was 3 months into his tour. His unit was patrolling near the Cambodian border. They walked into an ambush. David. I had to stop, take a drink. David threw himself on a grenade to save his squad. He was awarded the Medal of Honor posthumously. The room was silent. Even Daniel and Sophie, who thought they'd known their uncle was a war hero, hadn't known this detail. A hero, James said quietly. My biological father was a hero. Yes, I agreed. The best of us. Which is why when I married Emily, I always felt like I was living in his shadow. And now I find out I was raising his children all along. The shadow was darker than I knew. You were a hero too, Emily said. Raising 3 children who weren't biologically yours, even though you didn't know it. Being a wonderful father. Stop, I said. Stop trying to make this noble. You lied to me. For 40 years you lied. Every birthday, every Father's Day, every time I looked at our children and saw myself in them, which I did, I convinced myself I saw my eyes in Sophie's, my stubbornness in Daniel, my laugh in Margaret. All of it was delusion. Not delusion, Sophie said firmly. We are like you, Dad. Biology isn't everything. We learn to be stubborn from you, to laugh from you, to fight for what's right from you. David might be our biological father, but you're our dad. It was past midnight now. The ballroom rental had surely expired, but no one had come to kick us out. Maybe they'd heard about the drama and decided to give us space. Or maybe Sophie had paid for extra time, anticipating a long celebration. Instead, we got a long reckoning. What happens now? Margaret asked, ever practical. Do we tell people? Do we pretend tonight never happened? What's the plan? I don't know, I admitted. I need time to think. To process. We should do the genetic testing first, Daniel said. That's the immediate concern. Making sure my boys are okay. I'll coordinate that, James offered. I have all the contacts, know the procedures. How long have you been in town? I asked him. A week. Emily wanted me to come earlier, meet everyone gradually, but I insisted on waiting for tonight. I thought a celebration would be a better setting. He laughed bitterly. I was wrong. Where are you staying? The Marriott downtown. The same hotel I'd probably be sleeping in tonight. I couldn't go home with Emily, couldn't sleep in our bed knowing what I now knew. John. Emily started. I need space, I said. I need to think without you there, without the weight of 40 years pressing on me. Are you leaving me? I don't know. I honestly don't know. How does someone process this? Is there a manual for finding out your entire family is biologically your brother's? We could do counseling. Daniel laughed harshly. Counseling? Mom, you've been lying for 40 years. This is beyond counseling. Don't speak to your mother that way. I said automatically, then caught myself. Though I suppose technically, I can't tell you how to speak to the woman who made you from my brother's frozen sperm without my knowledge. Dad, Sophie said, you're still our father. That doesn't change. Doesn't it? Every assumption I had about our family was wrong. I thought I knew who we were. The Matthews family, solid, honest, built on mutual trust and respect. But we're not the Matthews family, are we? You're all Brennans, genetically. Emily's maiden name, David's children. Your name is on our birth certificates. Margaret pointed out. Legally, we're Matthews. Legal fiction, I said. Like our entire life. Emily stood up, swaying slightly from the scotch and exhaustion. I'm going home. James, would you drive me? I don't think I should be behind the wheel. James looked at me, asking permission he didn't need. I nodded. As they gathered their things, Emily turned back. I love you, John. I've loved you for 40 years. That wasn't a lie. But you loved David more. Differently. First love and lasting love aren't the same thing. What we built together. What we built was on a foundation of deception. That's not love, Emily. That's manipulation. She flinched but didn't argue. James helped her to the door, this son she'd given away now supporting her when her husband, the man she'd made a father through deception, wouldn't. After they left, my children, David's children, and I sat in the ruins of our anniversary party. Do you hate her? Daniel asked. I don't know. I'm too shocked to hate. That might come later. Do you hate us? Margaret asked quietly. I looked at them, these three people I'd raised, loved, shaped. Never. You're victims in this too. You didn't choose to be born from deception. But when you look at us now, do you see David? Sophie asked. I studied their faces. Now that I knew, I could see it. David's eyes in Sophie. His stubborn chin in Daniel. His long fingers in Margaret. I see echoes of him. I admitted. But mostly, I see the people you've become. The people I helped you become. So where does that leave us? Daniel asked. I don't know. But wherever it is, you three are still my children. DNA doesn't change 40 years of love. Even if that love was built on a lie. The love wasn't a lie. Everything else might have been, but not the love. We sat there as the clock struck 1, a family deconstructed but not quite destroyed, trying to figure out who we were now that we knew who we really were. Outside, Minneapolis slept, unaware that the Matthews family had died tonight, and something else complicated, messy, but possibly more honest, was trying to be born from its ashes. I didn't go to the Marriott. Instead, I drove to Lake Harriet and sat in my car watching the sun rise over the water. I'd proposed to Emily here, on a bench that still stood 50 feet from where I was parked. Spring of 1973, both of us still grieving David but finding something new in each other. Or so I'd thought. My phone had been buzzing all night, texts from Richard and Diane, from other friends who'd been at the party, all wanting to know what had happened. I ignored them all except one from Sophie at 3 a.m. Dad, please let us know you're okay. I texted back. Alive. Thinking. We'll be in touch later. At 7 a.m., I drove to my office. Matthews and Associates, the law firm I'd built from nothing, where my name on the door meant something. Where I was who I thought I was. Linda, my paralegal for 30 years, was already there. She took one look at me and poured coffee without asking. Rough anniversary party? You could say that. Want to talk about it. I want to work. I want to do something where facts are facts, contracts mean what they say, and nobody's been lying for 40 years. She raised an eyebrow but pulled out the Henderson files. We worked in silence until 9, when she finally said, John, you're still wearing your tux. I looked down. She was right. I'd been sitting by the lake, then working, in my anniversary party tuxedo. The boutonniere Emily had pinned to my lapel was wilted but still there. I should go home and change. Is Emily there? Probably. Is that why you're here instead? I set down my pen. Linda had been with me through everything, building the firm, raising the kids, Emily's phantom book club meetings that I now wondered about. Had they all been legitimate, Or were some covering other secrets? Linda, did you ever suspect Emily was hiding something? She considered carefully. She always seemed careful. Like she was managing multiple narratives. I thought it was just the pressure of being a lawyer's wife, maintaining appearances. Multiple narratives. That's one way to put it. My phone rang. James Wilson. Mr. Matthews? I'm sorry to bother you, but Emily she's not doing well. What do you mean? She collapsed this morning. We're at Minneapolis General. The doctors think it's exhaustion and stress, but they're running tests. The hospital. Of course. Where this all started with my blood test, where it would apparently continue. I'll be right there. Linda stood up. I'm driving you. You're in no condition. I'm fine. John Matthews, I've known you for 30 years. You're not fine. Let me drive. 20 minutes later, I walked into Emily's hospital room. She looked small in the bed, older than her 70 years, hooked to monitors that beeped steadily. James sat beside her, holding her hand. She keeps asking for you, he said. I'm here, I said, though I stayed by the door. Emily's eyes opened. John, what happened? The doctor says it's stress-induced arrhythmia. My heart couldn't take. She gestured weakly at the space between us. Your heart, I said, the irony not lost on me. The one thing you claimed was true. James stood. I'll give you some privacy. After he left, Emily and I looked at each other across 40 years of marriage and 12 hours of revelation. I'm sorry, she said. Not for giving you children, not for loving David, but for the lies. The decades of lies. Why didn't you trust me? When you found those samples, why didn't you tell me? Because I knew you'd say no. You'd have insisted on adoption or donor sperm from someone else. Your pride wouldn't have let you raise David's children. You don't know that. Don't I? You could barely stand that I'd loved him first. How would you have handled raising his biological children? The truth of it stung. Would I have agreed? Knowing myself at 30, probably not. So you took away my choice. Yes. And I'd do it again, because look at them, John. Look at who Sophie, Daniel, and Margaret became. Could we have done better with different choices? Before I could answer, Dr. Patterson walked in, the same doctor who'd called me about my blood work yesterday. A lifetime ago. Mr. Matthews? I heard about your wife. I'm sorry for everything. You knew? I asked. He looked uncomfortable. I suspected when your blood work came back. But patient confidentiality. You could have warned me. Warned you that your children might not be biologically yours? Without proof? That would have been unethical and possibly wrong. Instead, I found out at my anniversary party. I am sorry for that. But there's something else. Mrs. Matthews's test shows some concerning markers. We need to do more imaging, but there might be an issue beyond the stress response. The test took 3 hours. I waited, Linda beside me, while they scanned Emily's heart, ran blood work, consulted specialists. James paced the hallway, on the phone with his wife, trying to explain why he was still in Minneapolis, why the meeting with his birth mother had exploded into this crisis. Sophie, Daniel, and Margaret arrived together, having spent the night at Sophie's house processing everything. How is she? Sophie asked. They're running tests. Are you okay? Margaret asked me. I don't know what I am. We sat in uncomfortable silence until Dr. Patterson returned with another doctor, a cardiologist named Dr. Kim. The scans show significant damage to Mrs. Matthews's heart, Dr. Kim said. It appears to be Takotsubo cardiomyopathy. What's that? Daniel asked. Broken heart syndrome. Dr. Kim explained. Literally. Extreme emotional stress can cause the heart to change shape, affecting its ability to pump blood. It's usually temporary, but in Mrs. Matthews's case, there seems to be underlying damage, possibly from years of chronic stress. Years of chronic stress. Years of keeping secrets, maintaining lies. Will she be okay? James asked. With treatment and rest, probably. But she needs to avoid stress, which, given the current situation. He didn't need to finish. The current situation was nothing but stress. Can we see her? Sophie asked. Brief visits. Try not to upset her. We went in two at a time. Sophie and Daniel first, then Margaret and James. Finally, me alone. Emily was awake, tears streaming down her face. The doctor says I literally broke my heart, she said. 40 years of secrets finally catching up. Or one night of truth. John, what are we going to do? I don't know. But right now you need to focus on getting better. Will you ever forgive me? I thought about it, really thought about it. I don't know. But I know I don't want you to die. That's something. Emily, I need to ask you something. Were there other lies? Other secrets? Because if we have any chance of moving forward, I need to know everything. She was quiet for a long moment. There was one more thing. My heart sank. What? David left letters. For the children he hoped we'd have. They're in the safety deposit box at First National. I've never opened them. Letters from David to children he never knew would exist, who turned out to be his biological offspring. The irony was overwhelming. Anything else? No. That's everything. Every secret, every lie, every deception. How do I believe you? You don't. Trust is gone. I know that. But I'm telling you the truth now, when I have nothing left to lose. A nurse came in to adjust Emily's fore. She needs rest, she said firmly. I stood to leave, but Emily grabbed my hand. John, I love you. That was never a lie. I squeezed her hand but couldn't say it back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. 2 days later, while Emily remained hospitalized, I went to First National Bank with Sophie. The safety deposit box was in both our names, but I'd never accessed it, assuming it held important papers Emily was managing. The bank manager, Tom Brennan, no relation to Richard, led us to the private viewing room. I heard about your anniversary party, he said awkwardly. I'm sorry for whatever happened. The rumors were everywhere, each version more elaborate than the last. Richard had texted that morning saying the current theory was that I'd discovered Emily embezzling from my firm. If only it were that simple. The box contained what Emily had said, 3 letters in David's handwriting, yellowed with age. One addressed, to my son, another, to my daughter, and a third, to Emily's children. He knew. Sophie breathed. He knew she'd have children. He hoped. I corrected. They talked about it before he left. There were other things in the box too. Photos of David in uniform. His dog tags. The telegram informing us of his death. And surprisingly, a letter from me to David dated a week before he died, that I'd forgotten writing. Should we open them? Sophie asked about David's letters to his future children. They're addressed to you. To David's children. We thought we were your children. You are my children. But also his. We sat there, 3 sealed letters between us, the weight of history heavy in the small room. Let's take them, I decided. Have everyone together when we open them. That evening, we gathered at my house. Emily was still hospitalized but stable. Sophie, Daniel, Margaret, and James sat in the living room where we'd celebrated 38 Christmases, where Emily and I had renewed our vows on our 25th anniversary, where we'd mourned parents and celebrated grandchildren. Before we open these, I said, everyone needs to understand that whatever David wrote, it doesn't change the fundamental facts. He's gone. I raised you. Emily lied to all of us. Those things remain true regardless of what these letters say. Daniel opened, to my son. First, reading aloud. Dear son, if you're reading this, then I didn't make it home, but somehow you exist anyway. I'm writing this the night before I ship out to Vietnam, hoping against hope that someday Emily and I will have children. I want you to know that even though I'll never meet you, I love you. I love the idea of you, the possibility of you. Be good to your mother. She's the best person I know. Be brave, be kind, and know that somewhere in whatever comes after this life, I'm proud of you. Love, your dad, David. Daniel's voice broke on the last words. Margaret took to my daughter. Dear daughter, your mother is beautiful, so I know you will be too. But more than that, she's smart and funny and brave. Be like her. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't do something because you're a girl. Your mother certainly never let that stop her. I wish I could be there to walk you down the aisle someday, to teach you to drive, to scare away boys who don't deserve you. Since I can't, trust your mother's judgment. She'll know who's worthy of you. Love always, your dad, David. Sophie opened the last one with shaking hands. To Emily's children, whether you're mine or another man's, whether I'm gone or just gone from your mother's life, know this: Emily deserves to be happy. She deserves children who love her, a husband who cherishes her, a life full of joy. If I can't give her that, I pray someone else will. If that someone is reading this to you, then he's the man who stepped up when I couldn't. He's your real father, the one who earned the title. Biology is just science. Love is what makes a family. Be good to each other. Love, David. The room was silent except for quiet crying. Even James, who'd never known David, was wiping his eyes. He knew, I said finally. He knew someone else might raise his children. He meant if Mom remarried after he died, Sophie said. Not this. Does it matter? Margaret asked. The sentiment is the same. Biology is just science. Love is what makes a family. Within a week, the story had spread throughout Minneapolis. Not the full truth, that was too complex for gossip, but versions of it. The most popular theory was that I'd discovered Emily had been having an affair with a younger man at our anniversary party. Some said I'd attacked him. Others said Emily had run off with him. The truth was somehow both less dramatic and more shocking than any rumor. I returned to work, throwing myself into cases with a fury that concerned Linda. You can't avoid dealing with this by working yourself to death, she said. Watch me. But I couldn't avoid the tests. James had scheduled the genetic testing for Daniel's sons at Mayo Clinic. We all went, Daniel, his wife Emma, their boys, and me. Emma had taken the news about as well as expected, which is to say she'd thrown up, cried for 3 hours, then become fiercely protective of her children. If they have this condition, we'll deal with it, she'd said. But I need to know everything. No more secrets. The boys, 5-year-old Michael and 3-year-old Christopher, didn't understand why they were getting special attention from doctors, but they enjoyed the trip to Rochester, the hotel pool, the promise of ice cream after their blood draws. Why did you name him Michael? I asked Emma while we waited for results. After you, she said simply. Daniel wanted to honor his father. I'm not. You are. In every way that matters, you are. The results would take 2 weeks. 2 weeks of waiting to know if David's genetic legacy included a ticking time bomb. Emily was released from the hospital after 5 days, but she didn't come home. She went to stay with her sister in St. Paul. Just temporarily, she said when I visited to bring her clothes. Until we figure things out. What's to figure out? You lied, I found out, our marriage is over. Is it? You're still here. To bring you clothes. You could have had Sophie do that. She was right. I could have sent anyone. But I'd come myself, packed her things carefully, even included the book she'd been reading. I don't know what we are anymore, I admitted. We're two people who built a life together. A good life, despite the foundation of lies. Because of the foundation of lies. Our entire happiness was based on my ignorance. No. Our happiness was based on love, commitment, shared experiences. The lies were separate from that. You can't separate them. They're intertwined with everything. James knocked on the door. He'd been staying to help Emily, this son she'd given away, now the one caring for her. The lawyer is here, he said. About the estate planning. Estate planning. Because this mess had legal implications none of us had fully considered. If my children weren't biologically mine, If James was Emily's firstborn, inheritance became complicated. The lawyer, Catherine Chen, laid out the implications clearly. Since I was on all 3 birth certificates and had raised the children, I was their legal father. Biology didn't matter for inheritance purposes. But James, as Emily's biological child, also had potential claims. I don't want anything, James said quickly. I have parents. Had parents. They left me everything I need. It's not that simple, Catherine explained. If Emily dies without a will clearly stating her wishes, you could contest. I won't. Your children could. Years from now, they might feel differently. We spent 3 hours working through documents, creating trusts, ensuring that whatever happened between Emily and me, the children, all 4 of them, would be protected. As we signed papers, I found myself sitting next to Emily for the first time since the party. She smelled like hospital soap and the lavender lotion she'd used for 40 years. Familiar and foreign simultaneously. Remember when we bought life insurance? She said quietly. When Sophie was born, you were so worried about providing for everyone if something happened to you. I remember. You've always been a provider, John. A protector. Even now, making sure everyone's taken care of despite everything. It's who I am. It's who David was too. The letter said it. He threw himself on that grenade to protect others. You've been throwing yourself on emotional grenades our entire marriage, absorbing stress so the rest of us could be happy. Don't make me noble. I was oblivious, not noble. You were both. 2 weeks later, the test results came back. Daniel's sons were carriers but unlikely to develop symptoms. They'd need monitoring, but the new treatments James had mentioned meant they'd probably never suffer what his son had. So something good came from this truth, Daniel said. We know to watch for it now. We were sitting in my office. Daniel had come to tell me the results in person. Dad, can I still call you that? Always. What are you going to do about Mom? I don't know. Do you still love her? The question I'd been avoiding for 3 weeks. Did I love Emily? The Emily I'd married, yes. But that Emily didn't exist. The real Emily was a woman who'd lied every day for 40 years, who'd created children from my brother's sperm, who'd given away a child and found him again without telling me. I love who I thought she was. Maybe that's enough to start with. That evening, I drove to St. Paul. Emily was in her sister's garden, pulling weeds with the focused intensity she brought to everything. We need to talk, I said. She stood, brushing dirt from her knees. Yes. I've made a decision. Her face went carefully neutral, preparing for the worst. I'm not divorcing you. Yet. But I'm not taking you back either. We're in limbo, and we're going to stay there while we figure out if there's anything salvageable. What does that mean practically? Counseling. Twice a week. Complete transparency about everything. Phones, emails, finances, all of it. And you need to tell me anytime you're in contact with James. He's my son. Who you hid from me. If we have any chance, I need to know you're not hiding anything else. Okay. What else? We date. Start over. Try to build something honest this time. And the children? They're adults. They'll make their own decisions about their relationship with you. Emily nodded, tears streaming down her face. I'll do whatever it takes. We'll see. It's been 2 years now since that anniversary party. 2 years of counseling, tears, anger, and slowly, carefully, rebuilding. Emily and I aren't the same couple we were. We couldn't be. That couple was built on lies. This couple, whatever we are, is built on painful truth and the decision to try anyway. We still live separately. She has an apartment in Minneapolis now, close enough to see the grandchildren but far enough to give us both space. We have dinner twice a week, sometimes 3 times. We're learning to know each other without the filter of deception. James is part of our lives now. He brings his children to visit. They call me Uncle John and Emily Grandma M. His youngest, David, looks eerily like my brother at that age. Sometimes I watch him play and wonder what David would think of all this. Sophie published an article about our story, with everyone's permission, in The Atlantic. The family secret that destroyed and rebuilt us. It won a National Magazine award. She's working on a book now, trying to understand how secrets shape families across generations. Daniel and Emma had another child, a daughter they named Truth. A little on the nose, Emma admitted, but it felt right. His sons are monitored annually, but so far, no signs of the condition. Margaret became a genetic counselor, inspired by our crisis to help other families navigate biological complications. She says our story, horrible as it was, gave her purpose. The most surprising development is my relationship with James. We meet for coffee monthly, two men connected by David, one who knew him, one who carries his DNA. We talk about David, about family, about the strange ways life unfolds. Do you forgive her? James asked recently. Forgiveness implies absolution. I don't absolve her. But I understand her. She was 20 years old, pregnant, alone, traumatized. She made choices from that trauma that echoed for 50 years. And you? Do you forgive yourself? For what? For not seeing it. You blame yourself for being oblivious. He was right. I did blame myself. A good husband would have known. A good father would have sensed the truth. I'm working on it, I said. Last month, Emily and I went to David's grave together for the first time since the revelation. It's in Fort Snelling National Cemetery, a hero's resting place. We stood there, 50 years of complicated history between us and the ground. Do you think he'd understand? Emily asked. David? He'd probably think it was hilarious. His frozen sperm creating 3 kids who thought they were mine? He had that kind of dark humor. He'd have liked them. Sophie's intelligence, Daniel's integrity, Margaret's compassion. They're good kids. Good adults. Because you raised them. Because we raised them. Even with the lies, Emily, you were a good mother. It was the first truly kind thing I'd said to her in 2 years. That night, she came to the house for dinner. Not the apartment, but our house, where the ghosts of our former life still lingered. We cooked together, salmon, asparagus, the same meal we'd made hundreds of times. But this time, everything was different. I love you, she said as we cleaned dishes. Not David. Not his memory. You. The man who raised his children thinking they were yours. The man who's trying to forgive the unforgivable. I know, I said. And I did know. The truth, finally, after all the lies. We're not back together. May never be. But we're something. 2 people in our 70s who discovered their entire life was built on deception, and decided to try building something else. Not restoration, that's impossible. But maybe construction. Something new on the ruins of the old. The photographer from our anniversary party sent one last photo recently. She'd found it on her camera, taken just before everything exploded. Emily and I are standing together, about to cut the anniversary cake. We're looking at each other, smiling, unaware that in minutes, our world will shatter. I keep it on my desk. Not as nostalgia for what was, but as a reminder of what seemed true. And next to it, I keep a newer photo, all of us at James's daughter's birthday last month. Emily, me, our 3 children, James and his family. We look complicated, uncertain, but real. The dance that started this story, Emily pressed against James, me taking photos as evidence, wasn't what I thought. She was dancing with her lost son, holding him for the first time in 50 years. The young man I thought was her affair was her deepest secret and greatest sorrow. Nothing is ever quite what it seems. Truth has layers, like sedimentary rock, each one pressing down on the others, creating something solid but complex. Our family is like that now, layers of truth and lies, love and betrayal, genetics and choice, all compressed into something that shouldn't hold together but somehow does. We're still dancing, all of us, to music we're only just learning to hear. It's not the song we thought we'd be dancing to at this point in our lives. But it's honest, finally. And that, perhaps, is enough.